Hey, welcome to the Tuesday night Principal Chiropractic broadcast. I'm hosting tonight, but unfortunately, I have some sad news. Most of you may or may not have heard that our brother Marion Maloof passed away, I think, Sunday. Don't have all the details, but Marion's been a part of DE much longer than I've been a part of DE. He's loved by a lot of. He's just a big giant of a man and just a lover. And so Kat put together a little video. So I'm going to pause and we'll watch the video, and then we'll get back to you. So hold on. Well, many of you may know his daughter. She comes to DE. She's a student at Sherman, Catherine. Let's take a moment to keep Catherine and the entire Maloof family in our prayers as they go through the toughest of times. So let's just pause and just see their family feeling peace and feeling God's love. And we know that that Marion is resting in a peaceful place with the Lord. Thank you. Rest in peace, my big brother. So our speaker tonight is from Boaz, Alabama. And a lot of times when people speak at DE, they talk about the people in the crowd, You never know the guy sitting next to you, the guy sitting in front of you or behind you. We have giants sitting at DE who never get up on the stage. Tonight, we have Eric Galloway from Boaz, Alabama. And I was speaking to Eric. He's been in practice for 24 years. He went to DE when he was a student back in '92. He took a break, and about 7 years came back. And I swear I see him at every DE. I see his smile. I see his energy. I see his love. And he's just getting one of those guys that sits behind the scenes. And tonight we get to see and allow him to introduce himself to DE and see what DE has done for him. And I know it's impactful because I've talked to him. He's awesome. He's got the best smile in Alabama and best smile at DE. So let's introduce and welcome my man, Eric Calloway.
Hey there, everybody. So my chiropractic story did start a long time ago. It started as me being a young kid, a sick child growing up. I don't really have a chiropractic story as far as starting with chiropractic in my family or a chiropractor in my family, but I just started out of desperation. So as I was just a child, I never really remember feeling good. I never really remember feeling good in any way. So I remember my childhood being full of a lot of pain, a lot of people that doubted that pain. I've suffered a lot just at the medical model of healthcare. I was a sickly kid with a lot of chronic infections, had a lot of stomach infections, stomach issues, allergy problems. And then I developed on into having these chronic, almost daily, seemed like migraine headaches. They were just super severe. I'd usually wake up with nausea and vomiting with those in the morning, and that would kind of be my day and on into the next night. And that was going on several days every week for just year upon year, all through my childhood. It's just kind of a relentless cycle. One of the things I really remember looking back on that is I used to take my upper neck and my head, my temples, and I would squeeze my head into door frames. I would squeeze it between the ends of chairs, couches, just anything I could do to, I guess it was just my innate trying to tell me that I needed to get cleared out, that was my problem. But none of that made sense to me because I had the type of medical doctor when I was a child that he just felt like medications were basically the immaculate answer to everything going on. If you didn't improve with this month's newest medication, then he would just add the next month's newest medication and the next month's. And he really looked at me, and I was taught to just feel like I had a very imperfectly made body, and that I was suffering from a lack of chemicals and a lack of medications, and that somehow if they could just find that magic combination that I was short of, that I would be okay. And as time's gone on, I've grown to be thankful for this guy, my medical doctor when I was a child. He really showed me that this outside-in philosophy of health is not how we're made. It's not how we function. That we are all perfectly made, and that we all do heal from above down and inside out. I've now learned that the keys do always drop, and that is how things work. I was just blocked. And like I said, it's like my innate knew that, but no one around me was explaining that there were options, that chiropractic was a reality. While I was seeing this guy, I maxed out taking 27 different prescription medications a day. I was doing 8 allergy shots a week in addition to that. They had me on everything from, I was taking beta blockers for my heart, I was taking antidepressants, I was taking pain pills. I was taking so much stomach medication that I literally would keep a bottle of hydrochloric acid in my pocket, and I would take some of that hydrochloric acid. It would just burn me up, and then I would try to eat a meal, and then I would actually take an antacid that I was prescribed to try to balance my acidity back out. So that was the level of madness that I was going through my entire childhood. Even at this, I was still missing about 70 to 80 school days per year. I was just constantly out of school. I was a good enough student. I kept my grades up. So they kept advancing me through school, but I was miserable. There was nothing about me that was expressing life. So by my sophomore year of high school, I was 15 years old. I had a general practitioner. I had 2 neurologists. I had an eye, ear, nose, throat specialist. I had a gastroenterologist. And I was just becoming more and more sick. I looked sick. I looked toxic. I was depressed. I was suicidal. I only weighed about 130 pounds. I always tell people most of that was acne from all the toxins. I had these huge horn-rimmed glasses. I was just kind of and like I said, I was getting through school, so it kind of made me the sickly, picked-on nerd all through those high school years. Like I said, there was just nothing about me that was living life. And it made me kind of just hate most things in life. By the time I was in those high school years, I was being told by teachers, counselors, that I just needed to kind of realize that with my attendance issues in school, that I was just never really going to be able to do much. I would certainly never be able to go to college. I'd never be able to go and hit their attendance requirements. You know, they were tolerant of me going through school, so they were allowing me to keep passing with my grades. But then once I, tried to do a university program, I would just never be able to do it. So unless, my medical team finally came up with some magical combination of medications, then I was probably going to be stuck living a lifetime of disability or some home-based job, and there weren't exactly a lot of those back in the day. Some friends and family kept suggesting we at least try chiropractic, and I knew nothing of chiropractic other than they were some kind of a different type of doctor that didn't even prescribe medication, so it made it very difficult for me or my parents to understand how a doctor like that could do anything for me. We were seeing the best of the best. We were, at this point going down to the big city and seeing the big hospital doctors, and, we were apparently with the best of the best, and that's how we saw things. But I kept getting more desperate. The family kept getting more desperate. My parents kept getting more desperate, and we decided to finally give chiropractic a try. So we went that first day, and when he took some x-rays, when he delivered that first adjustment, that was the first inclination I even had that chiropractic involved the spine at all. I just had nothing to know about it. We didn't have YouTube videos. I just didn't know. He didn't do a healthcare class. There was no day 1 or day 2 to explain what was going on. But thankfully, he was accurate and he was principled, and he cleared my spine out that day. I remember walking out of his office, and for the first time, I looked at Mom and I said, I actually feel better. For the first time in my life, I'd actually felt better. It's like my eyes had been opened up. I saw the world differently. It's like there was a new light on in my brain. My power had been turned on for the first time at 15 years of age. So just never underestimate how desperate some of your patients are when they're laying on the table. And I'm thankful for that compassion. Like I said, I'm thankful for that growing stage with being a medical failure, because I've got compassion for that. I understand how desperate some of our patients are, and I understand how truly an adjustment can totally shift someone's life, how that can affect them for the rest of their existence and what that can do into the lives of others. That one adjustment's why I'm here tonight. And that's when chiropractic really became a part of who I am. I literally owe my life to this profession. So I decided to pursue a career in this. When you kind of fast forward to college, I was in my prerequisites and I was trying to narrow down which colleges I wanted to go to. I was at that time looking at Palmer, Maine. I looked at Life, Maine. My parents and I went and visited each campus. Especially living in Alabama, Life University, Life College, it just made sense. It was close by, it's a great climate, it was near Atlanta. We traveled to Davenport, and it seemed like we'd gone to Scandinavia for the weekend. It was bizarre to me. It was super cold. It was up north. Everything just seemed a little odd at it. However, upon touring the campuses, when we toured Palmer, I saw a very recently renovated, grandiose type university. Had the history of the Palmer family there. It seemed very attractive to me. At that time, when we went to tour Life, we basically just saw a single building and a bunch of very muddy parking lots and construction going on. And then there was Dr. Sid Williams. And honestly, this guy just seemed crazy to me. We did a campus tour that day, and at that time, we were given a copy of the book, Life of a Salesman. And I expected that book to be about chiropractic, maybe our education. And instead, when I read through it, I saw that as just basically Dr. Sid talking about how he liked to sell pots and pans. If you've never read that book, it was a very bizarre seeming story about how he was living that life of a salesman. It just didn't make sense to me. Nothing about Dr. Sid, nothing about the Life campus made sense to me. But thank God I kind of decided to look past Dr. Sid and embrace the convenience of Atlanta. And I felt like it was a good enough school to at least go to get my basics. And then if I decided to transfer on to Palmer, I could do that. Like I said, it still seemed a little crazy, but to my heart, it felt right. So the next step, I was starting school at Life, and I asked around campus about who I needed to see for my adjustments. I know I needed to continue those. And in my mind, I hadn't quite figured out there was an entire philosophy to what we do. So I was convinced when I got on that campus that I'd be part of some big research program, that they would gather data on me, that I just thought that's what doctors and universities did. Instead, I got directed over to Dr. Harvey Fish's office. Harvey's passed on now, but when I went in his office, it just seemed bizarre simple. There were no machines, there was no flash, there was certainly no data collection. But he absolutely rocked my world with his adjustments and with his certainty. He would let me shadow him at the office. I would ask a lot of questions. If you know Harvey, his response was just to tell me to quit asking so damn many questions and stand in the corner and watch. He helped me just by his certainty and his example. He taught me to adjust all cases with absolutely no fear. And with completely regardless of condition they were in or their ability to pay. That's where I really first got that instilled into me. He taught me to expect miracles. He taught me to get the big idea. He would say that to me over and over again, and I had no idea what he was telling me to get. So he told me to get to DE. And that's when life really changed for me. That's for me, that was the first time I'd really walked into a room and seen that much just abundance and that much love. I really saw just a room full of bigness. Everything seemed giant within that moment. I got to see Dr. Sid in a completely different light that day. He seemed like just a lightning rod of certainty, a lightning rod of purpose in chiropractic, instead of just some crazy salesman selling pots and pans. And I'd seen firsthand what chiropractic did for me in my life, but suddenly I knew that it would make everyone's life better like it had mine. I was I realized I was the expectation from chiropractic care and not just an exception. The giants on the stage, we had Dr. Sigafus, Dr. Santos, Reggie Gold, Ian Grassam, Bob Sotilli, Fred Barge. We were just surrounded by these people on campus. So there was certainty, there was abundance. We were taught about service. All these things were just hammered into our heads on a daily basis. I started getting what the big idea was. So between this environment and my personal health being restored, I felt like I was just a chiropractic rhinoceros. I felt like I'd really just been dipped and immersed. And that's kind of where a lot of things unfold in this story, because I thought I had it. Upon graduating, I started practice back home here in Alabama. And I kept going to DE here and there. But in my mind, again, I had this. I felt like, as Dr. Sid would say, that I wasn't just in chiropractic, but chiropractic was in me. I felt like all I had to do was give, love, serve, repeat. My numbers were looking good for a new practice. Things seemed almost too easy. I was following the template I'd been taught. Around this time is when I started convincing myself to start exploring other business ideas. Over the years, I lost my focus. As I've heard you guys say, my tent became too big, and big tents do tend to blow away if they are not anchored. And I'd missed that part about DE, is that you had to stay immersed in it. DE is my anchor in this, and DE is what hones my focus. It's where I drink so I can pour. And apparently it's quite necessary you continue to do so. And that's one of the big things I want all of you to hear in this. So there was a 10-year block of time that I just completely fell off the bus. I wasn't going to DE. During that time, I met, married, and divorced from someone that had become she had kind of become my sole focus. And I'm not saying that to say that focusing on my wife or on your spouse is a problem. But I lost my focus. I lost my focus completely on what my purpose was, serving as a chiropractor. And it's one of those things you don't necessarily see happening when you're in it. It's one of those things you don't necessarily see from your view box. During that time, she was an administrator for an imaging facility and later a physical therapy group. So that got into my psyche. It got into my value system. I became kind of a financial investor with this group. We started spending time in meetings with the medics in town, the physical therapists in town. I started paying attention to how many MRIs I was sending out for per week, not how many people I was serving. I started wearing scrubs to work. I was trying to just look the part. Like I said, everything changed. And then I started trying to convince myself that since my practice wasn't doing well for some strange reason, that I needed to start thinking about how many units I was billing for. If I could stand around doing some ultrasound and hooking people up to shockers and stretchers, that between that and my kickbacks from sending patients out for imaging studies, I could make up for my practice just sucking all of a sudden. Thankfully, I never got to the point of colonics, but I was probably close if I'd stayed on this path. I was still adjusting people. I still felt like I was talking the chiropractic story, but now I felt like I had some real authority and could make more money with less effort. Now this kind of gets into when I was asked to do this call, there are parts of the story I didn't really like looking back on. And I tried to kind of successfully just put that in my rearview mirror. But I've got complete gratitude for these things. And I've done enough introspection to see that my lack of passion, my lack of purpose, my loss of a giving, serving attitude, that's what made me unattractive. Not only to my patients, and that's why my practice had faltered and I'd started trying to fill those gaps, but also became unattractive to my wife. It's no wonder things fell apart, that everything fell apart. There's nothing missing from the DE philosophy on life. I was missing. I was the thing that stepped away. I wasn't following my purpose, and God desperately needed me serving his people again. And things happened fast at this point. When I'd married, we decided if we placed all the physical properties in her name, that we could structure some things around and actually grow more financially as a couple. And that meant I wasn't going to have my house anymore, and I wasn't going to be keeping my office building anymore. That office building had been my childhood home since I was 4 years old. There was some very emotional attachments I was being ripped from during this period of time. And I say that to say that that's where I really started just saying thank you and started really just handing things back over to God in that time. So I found out one morning from an email from my attorney that he had sent me that I wouldn't be keeping my office. And I had about 5 minutes before starting to my morning patient block that day. So I went in the back storage room and I asked God, I asked him for peace. I asked him for guidance to get me through my day. I asked him for solutions. And it was simple. I knew he knew my needs. And his response was waiting on me in my very first adjusting room that morning when I walked back out. Sweet lady was laying there on the table waiting on me that owns a small piece of property on her old downtown Main Street here in town. And I asked her if she still had their tenant down here. She said their tenant had just turned in their notice and were moving out that week. And she asked why I asked, and I told her I wanted it for my office. She seemed dismayed, but I knew inside that God had answered my prayer that quickly and that strongly. And I seriously never even looked at another piece of property. I took it in that moment. And I love my new office. It's amazing in ways that my other place could never be. This was basically a big open bay, and I was able to come in and design the new layout. I changed from a closed room format that I'd been doing my entire practice. I knew I needed to get away from it. I changed to a more open format. I really tried to sit back and look at myself and look at my fears and why I was even practicing the way that I was at all by that point. I knew I needed a higher flow. I knew I needed to be serving more people. I knew I didn't need to be concentrating on billing more units. And I knew my fear of changing those things is what it kept me back to. So in the course of 2 months, I renovated this new office space and moved in. I was moving out of my home as well during that time. Practice building was about a quarter of the size of my previous place. I moved from a large farmhouse, and we had 10 acres. And I moved into literally about a 30-foot long camper on a piece of rented land sitting at the edge of a large cattle farm. I'd just kind of gotten dropped on my tail all of a sudden. It's this time when my friends, my family, my patients, my amazing staff that I still have, so many people stepped up to help me, or I would have completely fallen. And I know that God was putting each of those people in my path at exactly the right moment. Even the lady that was laying there that had this office available within minutes. She was waiting on me to come out of the room and quit praying about her. It's just, he works that well. And I also knew that during this time that God was obviously trying to get my attention strongly. This is when I realized that apparently I'd stepped so far away from this mindset, this DE mindset, that I was so far away from this beautiful chiropractic life and philosophy that we've been giving, that God did what it took to get my attention and get me back to a giving, loving, serving, and doing mindset. I had to get back to removing myself from the outcome of things. And I had to realize that this was all God's anyway. Austin Davis, you brought up at the last DE, Dr. Sid saying that we had to work as though you owe and not as though you're owed. And I'd forgotten that. And I genuinely thanked God during this moment. When things seemed to be crumbling around me, I thanked God because I knew he would take care of me if I just got my heart right and started serving again. He doesn't make it hard for us. We make it hard on ourselves, and that's all I had done. So during that period of time, as part of my solution to life, I knew I had to get back to DE and my DE roots. That just made sense to me. It was my knee-jerk reflex. At that time, I got in touch with Carrie Sigafus. Carrie and I had been close friends my life. We graduated the program together. He told me to come down. I flew down and visited him. He was living and practicing in Panama at the time. And he pointed out that change, like what I'd been through, actually happens very slowly until it seems to happen all at once. And that's how it had been for me. He still believed in me. He didn't see that I was lacking anything. He saw me differently than I even saw myself at that point. And he reminded me of the simplicity of what life was about again, what chiropractic and our philosophy was about again. And he loved me in as a brother, and I will always love him for that. So about 2 months after that, the next DE was coming up. Kerry actually flew up from Panama. He said he'd do that if I would drive over to Atlanta, and we'd go to DE. So that was my first time back to DE in about 10 years. And it, God thing, beautifully ended up being the 50th anniversary. So when I walked into the lobby, we were still downtown at that time. I see the old Cadillacs out front. I see like walking in the lobby. I see Dr. Nell, Dr. Santos' widow and their daughter was there. Patsy Sigafus was there. To me, I felt like I'd walked into a time travel machine, and it's like everything made sense again. With everything going on, I simply didn't have the money to buy a ticket to DE. I didn't have the money to get a room. So that weekend, I never walked into a meeting room. Patsy was kind enough to let me crash on her couch without asking any questions. She certainly did so without any judgment toward me. I'd fallen back into the land of loving, giving, service, and abundance again. And all I had to do was come back home. Again, it was easy. And everything had changed for me in those moments I just mentioned. It's like immediately my heart just started filling back up again. During that weekend, I just sat in the lobby of the hotel. I don't think any of you noticed that I wasn't going into the meeting room. And pay attention to that. I was at an incredibly sad, desperate time in my life, and no one cared. And when I'm saying that, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, but no one cared. No one judged me, in other words. Granted, no one other than Carrie just knew exactly where I was at and how lost I felt. And I know that some of you just innately saw that in me. But again, nobody judged that. You all just loved me. Every single person I saw that weekend loved me, hugged me, and I was approached like I mattered as much as anyone in that building. And there were still familiar faces there. Paul Blumsack, Tim Langley, who I still miss to this day. But when I walked in and they saw me, they acted like, I remember they looked at me like Santa Claus had walked in the room. They were just glad I was back. So thank you, Paul. Thank you, Tim. You really showed me a welcome back. And there were people I'd never met before. Austin Davis, Haig, John, Jen Hastings, just a lot of people that didn't know me at all, had never seen me. And you all treated me like I was a long lost brother. And now some of those people are the most important friends and loved ones that I've got in my life. And it's because they were living these principles that were taught. And this is also the time in the story that I want you all to realize that you may not be as solid as you think you are. So stay close to DE. Drink while you pour. It doesn't matter how much of a rhinoceros you may think you are in this. You're not if you don't stay immersed. It doesn't matter if you were handed your diploma from Sid Williams. It doesn't matter if you walked into a DE meeting room 100 times. It doesn't matter if, like me, the entire course of your life was changed by a chiropractic adjustment. I slipped into the abyss. And if you're not anchored and you don't stay immersed, the same thing will happen. After I started back to DE, I started listening to the old Sigafus calls. I listened to the previous DE speakers. I listened to Dr. Sid, his old talks. I got his books. I got the green books back out. Peter Omlinger, when you did your morning meditation calls last year, just all those things. I kept showing up at DE. So the next time we're all there, the next time we're all at DE, I promise you're going to be passing someone in the hallway, or you're going to sit beside someone that's, yes, going through maybe the best of times in their life, but you're also going to be beside someone that's going through some of their worst of times. People like me that were desperate, very fearful, hopeless. Make sure to hug and love everyone you see. And not just at DE, but in life, your patients, your strangers you see out at the mall, whatever. Some of those hugs are going to give you the energy you need to stay full. And some of those hugs will be giving someone that is desperate for that energy, the love that they need. And that's why it's true that nothing is bigger than life. All I had to do during this entire story again was just to come back home to DE to all of you. I had to become a hollow bone again. I had to start loving again. And life is amazing now. My life is back in balance and better in so many ways. My schedule is more balanced. I'm able to enjoy life in all ways while still serving. Later on, Carrie introduced me to a friend of his that has become a beautiful partner to my life. She's an amazing energy and has become a loving rock to me. My parents are still living and within a few blocks of my office. It's a blessing I still have them and this time with them. My practice balance is better. During that decade of time when I was away from DE, my practice sank to where I was only seeing 50 people per week, maybe 60 if we were just rocking it out. And now we'll see that many folks during a morning shift. I decreased my schedule for life balance, but increased my flow. It let me have a higher focus when I was in there, and I came in that way. I threw out all my therapy equipment. I started talking the tick again. I got rid of my scrubs. My friend Dr. Nicoletta Alexander reminded me that Dr. Sid would have asked me how I expected to be successful while I was wearing my pajamas to work. And there's a lot of truth to that. I was trying to look the part. But I tried to take all these things that could have been labeled as bad in my life and instead turn them around into a state of gratitude and change things about me and my practice life that obviously needing change. Like I said, God went to great measures to get my attention. I also started back technique training. If you're not taking this seriously enough to have technique coaches, I think you need to care that much about what you do. Keep refining your understanding of our philosophy, yes, but keep refining your skills to be able to go out and turn the crank and deliver the goods. Pat McMahon and Aaron Morris with Century Training, Paul Blumsack, Haig John, they've all taught me things I didn't even realize I was slacking about with my adjusting techniques too. We've got to keep working toward mastery. Pat and Aaron are who finally got me doing a morning routine as part of my technique training. It took me all this time to realize how important that is. To not only get my body moving and get in touch with that and get warmed up, but the bigger thing is dropping in your heart, doing my 49 breaths, verbalizing my gratitudes, and getting where I can go in and be present 100% for my patients when I do that. A lot of that gets back into the philosophy and the talks of the love button that we all know. And this is all important. This is all so important. Of all times in our planet's history, this is so important what we do. So don't let God down right now. Don't let his people down. Yes, be that rhino. Be certain. Be strong. Dr. Sid taught us I can, I will, I must. And we don't have to do much, really. We've just got to give, love, do, serve, show up, do it out of God's abundance without attachment to outcome. Do it masterfully. Detect and correct subluxations so we can unleash the literal power of the universe that is within each and every one of us. Dr. Rick Howard reminded me of this so profoundly recently. Andy Harding, you've taught us that when we're in a room, if we've prayed for all the people that we can help to show up at the office that day, and we've got to assume that those people were praying for God to send someone that can help them, that we're potentially the only missing part to that equation. Again, the patient's there. It's a given that God's there. He's present always. So we can't mess up and be that missing link. we'd all better show up. And I thank you. I think, Andy, I think about that every time I walk in the building. Thank you for that. I genuinely love and appreciate all of you. And I love this dynamic essential that we're all a part of. I've got a completely new understanding to the depth of BJ's challenge to guard this sacred trust well. I didn't do that for a while, and I'm sorry for that. And I know many of you may not know me other than that guy that stands in the back of the room, and I love to give hugs. But I just kind of hang out in the back. I feel like I've got so much I need to absorb when I'm in there. But please know how much love I'm pouring into you, and know how grateful I am that each of you have poured love back into me. So in closing, just stay loving, stay immersed in DE and the principle, and don't think you're too big or too big of a rhino to think you need this tribe. I love you all, and thank you again. Thank you for everything. And yes, I ain't going down no more, Haig. I love you guys. Have a great night.
All right, dude. I got a bunch of notes. Okay. I got a bunch of notes. And I want to kind of go through some of them. One, I had no idea about that adjustment changing your life.
Yes.
For us to all remember each adjustment is a life changer. It doesn't matter if it's a crook in the neck or somebody's puked his whole life, right?
Yes.
No idea where they're coming from.
Yes.
Keep working your technique towards mastery. Absolutely. 33 years of practice, still need to work on it every day. Drink while you're pouring. I love that, man. Drink while you're pouring. I totally resonate with that. Adjust expecting miracles. And then hug everyone, not only in your practice, just be a hugger. There is nobody at DE that gives a better hug than you do, dude. And I feel your hugs, and I feel you grab. I had no idea what your past was. I had no idea where you're coming from. I just felt your hug for the first time, and I always look forward to your hugs, and I can't wait to get another hug from you, my brother. You did
got one waiting on you.
You did awesome tonight. So much. I appreciate everything you said tonight. And again, as we leave, please keep the Malou family in our prayers. And if you know somebody in chiropractic that hadn't been to DE or that may be struggling like Eric is, now's the time. Call them up. Invite them in.
Yes.
Because, I mean, there's so many people who are struggling, and maybe you don't know how bad they're struggling. Maybe you do know how bad they're struggling, and you need to call them and invite them to sleep on your couch at the next DE.
Amen.
Man, I love you. Appreciate you. I'll talk to you soon. Everybody, good night. Love you all.
Love you all.